I'm Nate Eaton with EastIdahoNews.com here in our newsroom talking with Frank Montoya. He is the retired FBI special agent in charge. He was in charge of the Hawaii field office for a few years. When he retired, he was in charge of the Seattle field office, worked for the agency over 25 years, now living in Utah. Frank, thanks so much for talking with me about this case. The number one question we have been asked by so many people, why haven't Chad and Lori Daybell been arrested?
That's a great question. I've been looking at a lot of the stuff that's been published, and the bottom line is, what would be the crime? You know, the children are missing, but what does that mean? Where are they? You know, if they're in the care and custody of a family member or of a friend or somewhere else, but they're still alive, you know, what are we looking at in terms of potential crimes to charge these people with? Maybe child endangerment. Beyond that, at this point, I'm not sure.
Some people would say, well, she defied the court order to get the kids back to REXBURG, you know, a week or two ago. Is that sufficient enough to have her extradited back to Idaho?
So it's potentially leverage that they can use against her. You know, the next step in that process to get a warrant, depending on what the charge is, there may very well be ground to have extradited back, at least to address that question, where are the children?
Could there also be the fact that law enforcement might deliberately not bringing her into custody?
Yeah, I don't think it would be deliberate. There's a number of options that they could pursue in terms of trying to get to the bottom of this issue. The threat of arrest could be one of them. I would say, however, at this point, I mean, the children have been missing since September, that it's time for, you know, whatever assertive or overt methods that they could put into play, that they probably are seriously thinking about doing that.
I hate to even mention this, but could this be one of the cases where they can't charge them unless they find a body, the bodies of the children, or they find them alive, which is, of course, what everybody's hoping for?
Yeah, that's always a possibility, especially in a case like this. I think that, you know, what is also out there are the other cases that are currently under investigation. They're related to her new husband or to her you know, herself, related to the death of previous husbands. You know, the new guy's wife. So those are also opportunities that may lead to further discoveries in this case.
Let's talk a little bit about that. There's so many jurisdictions involved here. Arizona, you have the 2 deaths. REXBURG, you have the missing kids. Fremont County, Idaho, where Tammy Daybell died in her home. You've got Hawaii, where they are now. You've got Tammy Daybell was buried in Utah, so Utah's brought into it. And then your former employer, the FBI, is apparently assisting all of these. Is this a case where maybe there could be federal charges on down the line?
That's always a possibility. I think that right now the majority of that assistance would be in terms of lead coverage in different jurisdictions, coordinating that. There's also the very likely possibility that the lab is involved to evaluate forensic evidence. The other thing that you know, the opportunity that is out there for local law enforcement to take full advantage of is the behavioral sciences program. So they can bring guys out, you know, employees out who are well versed in these kinds of cases around the country, around the world for that matter, and they can lend some pretty valuable insight into how these cases are proceeding.
Let's talk a little bit about what might be going on with law enforcement behind the scenes and prosecutors. I know you don't know. We'll make it clear that you're not connected to this case at all. What are they doing right now?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the term leaving no stone unturned. And I think that that's exactly what they're doing in this case. Your biggest fear as an investigator in these kinds of investigations is when the lead well dries. And so keeping it high profile, using the media to promote the investigation, talking to a lot of different jurisdictions, looking at every one of these cases, not only individual cases, but in terms of possible connection, anything and everything they can do to uncover more leads. So talking to people, examining any forensic evidence that's been collected, communicating with the other jurisdictions. So whether they're in Idaho or Utah or in Hawaii or with the Bureau, making sure that communications is ongoing on a daily basis. So that if something new develops, that everybody is aware of it, and then you bring that into play as far as your next steps are concerned.
You lived in Hawaii. You supervised the FBI over those islands. Is this a typical place where people under investigation flee to?
No, I mean, Hawaii was paradise, and sure there was crime there, but something like this, very bizarre. And it's a place to go to try to hide, maybe, but at the same time, this is one of those cases where there's a lot of awareness out there, especially from the media's perspective. And that's going to play, I think, in the investigators' hands as well. When they're moving forward, they know where these people are. They know why, or possibly why they are there. And so as long as they have them in pocket, so to speak, there's that opportunity to just keep pressing as far as getting answers, about the children, about the other cases.
Is there a worry, though, Frank, that they could hop on a plane and flee to Mexico or South America or somewhere and vanish?
Sure, that's always a concern, especially to a place where there's no extradition treaty or what they call mutual legal assistance treaties with that country. That's always a possibility. The question is, why did they pick Hawaii? Are they going to stay there for the long term? Is this just a pit stop? What is going on in their heads? What's their next move? They obviously know that there's a lot of interest in them. And, how are they going to react to that?
What do you think the public needs to know that maybe has not been reported thus far?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now it's all about patience. There are a lot of jurisdictions involved. There's a lot of interest, I think, in law enforcement to resolve this. And so they're going to be putting forth their best effort every day. And so patience for the public is key. The other thing is, if you think of anything that might be of value to the case, even if it's a small thing, that they need to get in touch with local law enforcement, with the FBI, to express that information or to provide that information, right? I understand that the young girl's telephone has been recovered. Did anybody receive a text? Have pictures? Have they telephone calls? Any kind of information that could be of use in terms of tracking her whereabouts. That would be huge, and that's a message, I think, to the young people that were associated with her. If their parents are paying attention to this, asking their kids if they know anything that may have transpired between them and the missing children. Every little bit of information at this point in time can be very useful, no matter how small.
Frank, you've covered a lot of cases over your career, 25 years as the special agent in charge. You saw a lot of things. Have you seen anything like this?
I've heard a couple of cases like this. I was listening to one of the news reports, the individual from the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You hear about things like this, but seeing something like this in particular, this is pretty out there. This is strange, bizarre. I mean, when you look at the number of people that are dead, that are associated with either individual that are at the center of this case, when you consider the missing children, how long they've been gone, there's something very suspicious about their behavior. Now, the problem with that in investigations like this is what I know is not necessarily as important as what I can prove.
And the officers and the prosecutors need to prove it.
That's in the end, yes. I mean, suspicion, probable cause, reason to believe, all of that can be helpful in terms of building the case. But yeah, in the end, you got to prove that there was wrongdoing. Sure, it's frustrating that the parents aren't talking. It's frustrating that they're out having a grand old time in Hawaii. But maybe at some point, I saw another news piece where they're going to church. Maybe their conscience finally gets to them, or at least to one of them. I would note also in cases like this that it's always, at least in my experience, that it's the woman that's the hard nut to crack. The husband is usually the one that comes clean first. So maybe that's something to look at. Well,
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Frank Montoya. Frank Montoya is a former FBI special agent in charge of the Seattle field office. He also spent several years in Hawaii as the special agent in charge, which of course is tied closely to this case. Hopefully we'll have you back and you can give us some insight as new developments come out.
I hope it has a happy ending.